So in this module, our goal was to learn more about aggregations to understand what was really happening with the aggregation design wizard and what steps we can take to improve on the aggregations that it creates. We started with a review of general aggregation concepts. We learned that aggregations are analogous to summary tables. In MOLAP storage, aggregation data is stored alongside fact data, and in ROLAP storage, aggregations are accessible through an indexed view. Either way, the purpose of aggregations is to improve query performance. One of the ways that we can influence the design of aggregations is to configure the aggregation usage property for each attribute. The initial value for each attribute is default. And in that case, Analysis Services has specific rules that it applies to determine which of the other three aggregation usage settings will apply: full, none, or unrestricted. With full, an attribute will be added to every aggregation. With none, the attribute will be excluded from every aggregation. And with unrestricted, Analysis Services will decide, using a cost-benefit analysis, whether or not to include the attribute in any particular aggregation. In addition to working with the aggregation usage, there are some steps that we can take to optimize the time that the aggregation wizard takes to create the aggregation designs. Most importantly, we need to create user hierarchies and define attribute relationships to get the best design. We can also help the wizard by setting the aggregation usage properties manually. It's also important to use the correct estimates for the partition count, as well as each attribute's number of members within that partition. Now, after the aggregation wizard creates the aggregation designs, we can use the aggregation designer in advanced view to review the aggregations created. If necessary, we can use the designer to override the designs. We can add attributes or remove attributes from any given design. We can also create our own aggregation design so that we can add support for specific queries that we know can be improved by additional aggregations. We can find those slow queries and identify the attribute granularity to include in an aggregation by using SQL Server Profiler and monitoring the query subcube verbose event to find the attributes that are candidates for aggregation. Periodically, we need to run usage-based optimization. That way, we can capture the overall usage of our cube and determine what the slow queries are so that we can build aggregations to improve the performance of those slow queries. This is a task that needs to be performed periodically because usage of the cube can change over time. Here are some additional resources that you might find helpful as you're working with aggregations. Regardless of which version of Analysis Services you're using, all of these resources are still applicable, whether using 2008, 2008 R2, or 2012 multidimensional.